This is the first part of a selection of readings from the novelisation of Richard Attenborough's film Shadowlands, written by Leonore Fleischer, based on the true story of the relationship between C.S. Lewis and Joy Gresham. These readings concentrate mainly on the relationship between C.S. Lewis, familiarly known as Jack Lewis, and Peter Whistler, one of his students. Outside the bookshop windows, the late February rain poured steadily down in a grey curtain. A parade of black umbrellas went by, with long rivulets of water streaming down the cloth and forming new puddles on the high street. Inside Blackwell's bookshop, C.S. Lewis was autographing copies of his books. The next in line was a young boy. For a moment, Lewis was reminded of Douglas Gresham, and he felt a sudden pang. "Thank you, sir," the lad said, holding out his copy of The Magician's Nephew. It was the 6th book in his Narnia series and already a bestseller. "Good, good," Lewis smiled, signing the book with a flourish. As he handed it back, Lewis happened to look across the store and saw Peter Whistler from his romantic poetry course browsing in the far stacks. The student's strange rebel nature was of more than passing interest to Lewis, so he watched him for a minute as the young man pored over the titles on the shelf. Then, with a shock of surprise, Lewis saw Whistler select a volume and slip it into his bag. Surely he was going to pay for it. But as he continued to watch from a distance, Whistler left the shop without paying. "He's stolen that book," thought Lewis in dismay, but he said nothing, only turning his attention back to the next person in the autographing line. Yet he knew there was something he himself ought to be doing about it. The following day was a speaking engagement in the Midlands, where once again he delivered his words on God's intentions towards the pain of humanity, the lecture which was the most beloved of his audiences. "I'm not sure that God particularly wants us to be happy. He wants us to be able to love and be loved. He wants us to grow up. We think our childish toys bring us all the happiness there is, and our nursery is the whole wide world. Something must drive us out of the nursery, to the world of others. Isn't that something suffering?" Once again, of standing ovation, some people even had tears in their eyes, but Lewis's thoughts were not on his listeners or even on his own words. They were on Peter Whistler. Surely there was somebody in need of help. As soon as he returned to Oxford, he went to look for the boy. He knew that Whistler lived in college rooms somewhere at Magdalen. The undergraduate rooms were in the quads off the cloistered walks and up narrow staircases. There were several rooms to one entrance, with numerous entrances opening onto the cloister walkway. So he went from doorway to doorway, reading the names painted on the walls, until he found Whistler. Outside Whistler's door, Lewis hesitated. Did he have a right to be here? No, the better question was, did he have a right not to be here? No, that he did not. He knocked on the heavy oak door, waited a moment, then knocked again, this time more loudly. After a moment the door opened, and Whistler, even more unkempt than usual, peered out. "I hope you don't mind," Lewis said quietly. "Come in." Reluctantly the boy opened the door and Lewis entered. The room was icy cold and very untidy, not only because of the customary undergraduate clutter, but also because of the piles of books that were everywhere. Books stood on the shelves and were stacked haphazardly on the floor, on the single chair, on the window seat. Books on top of books on top of books. Whistler said nothing, but stood with a resentful expression on his face, waiting to learn why Professor Lewis was here, in his room. Lewis decided it was better to come right to the point. "I happened to be in Blackwell's the other day. I saw you borrow a book. Steal. I stole it," Whistler admitted at once. He waved one around in an inclusive gesture. "Most of these books are stolen. Why not? They're written to be read. At least I read them, which is more than most people do." "You read books differently to the rest of us, do you?" Lewis was nettled by the young man's arrogance, yet curious. Of all the things one could steal, books were surely among the most unusual. "Yes, I do." The young man nodded his head vehemently. His thin cheeks were a dull red, and his eyes shone with a feverish brightness. As he spoke, his North Country accent became even more pronounced. "I read at night, so nothing breaks my concentration. All night sometimes. When I start a new book, my hands are shaking, my eyes are jumping ahead. Does the writer feel the way I've felt? Does he see what I see? Yes, that's good, that's true. No, he's cheating, he's ducking it. Ah, wait, that may be so. Yes, yes, he's seen it too. My father used to say, he's a teacher like you. No, no, not like you, only a village schoolmaster. What was it you asked me? How do I read? Sometimes I shout at the book, or I kiss the page, or I cry." Whistler broke off, conscious that he was no longer making any sense, waiting for the celebrated scholar, the eminent author and lecturer C.S. Lewis, to mock him or reproach him, to use his superiority as a weapon against him. But Lewis did none of these things. He had listened with strong interest to every word. Now he only asked mildly, "What was it your father used to say?" "We read to know we're not alone." The simple words struck Lewis. What a wonderful truth, he thought. We read to know we're not alone, and how well Peter Whistler had learnt it. His opinion of his student underwent a profound change.